If you've ever thought HOA drama couldn't get dangerous, think again, because in one quiet suburban neighborhood, a simple treehouse turned into the center of a nightmare that ended with felony charges, a child in the hospital, and an entire community shaken to its core. And before we get into this unbelievable chain of events, make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss any of these shocking real-life stories that prove truth is stranger than fiction, because what happened here will leave you questioning not only the power of homeowner associations but also the very limits of human judgment when authority is left unchecked. It all began in a neat cul-de-sac in a Florida suburb where young Ethan, just 8 years old, had spent months working alongside his father to build a small but magical treehouse in their backyard, not some sprawling fortress that overlooked other homes or a hazard nailed into a rotten trunk, but a simple wooden platform with a railing, a little ladder, and space for a telescope, a stack of comic books, and a tiny flag Ethan had painted himself with stars, moons, and lightning bolts. For Ethan, that treehouse was not just wood and nails, it was his sanctuary, his castle, his adventure world, and the only place he felt truly free after struggling at school with bullying and at home with the silence that often hung over the house since his parents' separation. But what should have been an innocent project became a lightning rod of anger when Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of the neighborhood HOA, spotted it peeking above the fence during her daily walk. Karen was the type who lived and breathed the rulebook, who measured grass height with a ruler, who fined people for leaving their trash bins visible for more than 20 minutes after pickup, and who believed her mission in life was to keep the neighborhood in perfect order, even if it meant alienating every single person around her. She stormed up to Ethan's mother's door, HOA violation notice in hand, and declared the treehouse a visual nuisance, a structural hazard, and an unauthorized addition that violated HOA aesthetics, even though no one else in the neighborhood had complained, and several neighbors privately admitted they thought the little treehouse was adorable, even charming. Ethan's mom tried to reason with Karen, explaining that her son had poured his heart into building it with his father, that it was safe, that it was not visible from the street, and that it was on their own property. But Karen's smile was the kind that never reached her eyes, a tight-lipped grin of condescension, and she coldly said, "Rules are rules, and if you don't take it down, I will." Most people thought that was just bluster, but Karen wasn't joking. Over the following weeks, she escalated, first with written fines, then with threats of legal action, then with angry HOA board meetings where she waved photos of the treehouse like evidence in a criminal trial, and finally, late one Saturday morning when Ethan was playing in the treehouse alone while his mom was inside making lunch, Karen decided she was done waiting. Armed with a handsaw, gloves, and an almost frightening determination, she marched right into their backyard without permission, ignored the "No trespassing" sign, and began sawing through one of the supporting beams of the treehouse. Ethan, startled and terrified, leaned over the railing, shouting, "Stop! That's mine!" But Karen, her jaw clenched, snapped, "You're not supposed to be up there, it's against the rules." And in that split second of chaos, the weakened support cracked, the wood groaned, and before Ethan could climb down, the entire side of the treehouse lurched violently. His small body was thrown against the railing, which splintered, and he tumbled 10 feet to the ground, landing with a sickening thud. Karen froze, the saw still in her hand, her breath ragged as Ethan lay motionless in the grass, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle, his face pale, his breath shallow. His mother's scream shattered the silence as she bolted outside, dropping the plate of sandwiches she had been carrying, and in seconds the scene was chaos. Neighbors rushing over, phones dialing 911, and Karen stammering, It was an accident, I was just trying to enforce the rules." But to the deputies who arrived minutes later, the sight was far from an accident. A child badly injured, a woman with a saw, and witnesses who described her deliberate trespassing and destruction of property. Ethan was rushed to the hospital with a broken arm, a concussion, and internal injuries that required surgery, while deputies placed Karen in handcuffs right there on the lawn as she protested, "I'm the HOA president. You can't arrest me." But they did, booking her on charges that escalated from trespassing and vandalism to felony assault with a deadly weapon, since the saw had been wielded recklessly in a way that directly caused harm to a child. The story didn't end there, though, because the trial that followed tore the community apart. Some of Karen's allies on the HOA tried to defend her, claiming she had only been doing her duty and that Ethan's parents were irresponsible for allowing him to play in a dangerous structure, while others condemned her outright, horrified that an adult could let obsession with rules override compassion and common sense. Twists came fast. Text messages Karen had sent surfaced, where she bragged about teaching that kid a lesson, and surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera caught her dragging the saw across her driveway before marching into Ethan's yard, clearly premeditated. In court, the prosecution painted her as a power-hungry bully who had weaponized the HOA's bylaws and taken justice into her own hands, while the defense desperately tried to argue diminished capacity, stress, even claiming she had been provoked by ongoing noncompliance in the neighborhood. But the most dramatic twist came when Ethan, still frail but recovering, took the stand months later, his arm still in a brace, and in a trembling voice told the jury how he had begged her to stop, how he had told her he was up there, and how she had looked right at him before cutting anyway. That testimony sealed the verdict. Guilty on multiple counts, including felony assault, reckless endangerment, and criminal mischief. The judge, her voice stern, declared, homeowners associations are meant to build community, not destroy lives. You turned rules into weapons, and in doing so, you nearly destroyed a child's future, before sentencing Karen to several years in prison. Ethan's family eventually moved away, unable to bear the memories of the yard where their son had nearly died, but Ethan never forgot. The treehouse was rebuilt, sturdier this time, by his father in their new home, and though Ethan was more cautious now, he learned that sometimes standing up to bullies meant letting the truth speak louder than fear. As for the HOA, it collapsed within a year, neighbors fed up with corruption and cruelty, finally realizing that the real danger had never been a child's treehouse, but the unchecked power of someone who forgot that community means compassion.